to the Tales of the New Jersey Shore, the podcast of New Jersey author and historian Emil Salvini. Emil's Facebook page of the same name, Tales of the New Jersey Shore, has tens of thousands of followers. His best-selling books on the Jersey Shore were the basis for his television documentaries broadcast on PBS and NJTV. So sit back and join Emil as he shares his tales of the 127-mile coastline known worldwide as the New Jersey Shore.
Hi, I'm Emil Salvini, author and historian, and these are Tales of the New Jersey Shore. Before I begin Asbury Park, the early days, I want to thank the thousands of listeners that support my podcast. It's a labor of love that I hope counters in some way the negative image numerous cable shows have given their viewers of our beautiful Jersey Shore. I call this podcast The Early Days because Asbury has a long history, far too much to cover in a single podcast. So here we go, sit back, and I hope you enjoy Asbury, The Early Days. On a bright sunny day in July 1894, Sterling Elliott, the editor of the periodical Good Roads, was attending a convention in Asbury Park when he found himself in the midst of a sea of spectators preparing to enjoy the annual baby parade. Unsure of the cause of the commotion, Elliott flagged down a local policeman. "What's up?" he asked the frantic constable, who, after giving an incredulous look, replied tersely, "Baby show." Like some kind of rube who had just arrived from the hinterlands, Elliott had stumbled upon a city event that at its peak drew more than 100,000 spectators to the mile-long Asbury Park boardwalk. The first baby parade held in Asbury Park on July 22, 1890, had 200 children competing for the grand prize of, guess, a baby carriage. What a sight it must have been. The band serenading the oceanfront crowd with Rockabye Baby, while Asbury's founder, James Bradley, carrying his trademark white umbrella, leading the red, white, and blue caravan. The fearless judges of that first parade awarded prizes to those they deemed the handsomest babies. By the time Sterling Elliott visited Asbury, the current crop of judges have decided it would be less dangerous to them to choose the best decorated carriages rather than physical attributes of the babies. Only 24 years before this endearing picture of Americana rolled down Asbury Park's boardwalk, the land that they paraded on was a seaside wilderness overgrown with oaks, pines, and cedars and inhabited by only one family. A pious, wealthy New York brush manufacturer named James A. Bradley carved Asbury Park out of this rustic landscape. He was attracted to the natural beauty of the land, noting that Asbury Park occupies only one of two spots along the New Jersey shoreline, the region from Long Branch to Manasquan, where the mainland meets the ocean. The picturesque town of Cape May, about 100 miles to the south, occupies the other. The remainder of New Jersey's seaside resorts are built on barrier islands, mere strips of sand. To the casual observer of the day, the handsome tree-lined avenues made one wonder if this were truly the Jersey Shore or some country village. Bradley's association with the Jersey Shore began in 1870 when he purchased a lot in Ocean Grove, the tent village founded only the year before by the Methodist Camp Meeting Association. As a devout Christian, Bradley had feared that the land bordering Ocean Grove would somehow fall into the hands of a secular promoter who might not share the values of the association. When almost 500 acres just north of Wesley Lake came on the market in 1871, the entrepreneur purchased the land for $90,000, and he promptly named the area Asbury Park in honor of Bishop Francis Asbury, the first bishop of the Methodist Episcopal Church ordained in the United States. Bradley was an energetic and resourceful man who carefully planned the layout of his city by the sea before the first tree was felled. Even today, visitors to Asbury Park can sense that the 100-foot wide avenues that flare to 200 feet at the ocean were not randomly measured, but rather followed the 19th century footprints of someone who sought to maximize the ocean views and sea breezes throughout the city. Founder Bradley, as he was known to the town's residents, also set aside land for parks, churches, and civic structures, and incorporated city planning concepts that he had encountered while traveling through Europe. Bradley was so determined to make his enterprise a success that he would send coaches to meet the trains in Long Branch and transport the sojourners to Asbury Park in the years before the railroad extended south to his fledgling resort. His planning reached beyond aesthetics, making Asbury Park in 1881 the first seaside resort in America to have a sanitary sewer system. 6 years later came the trolley network, the second electric system in the United States and the first in New Jersey. Prior to this, all the trolleys were naturally horse-drawn. By 1889, Bradley's city was becoming known as the Duchess of the North Shore, second only to its neighbor to the south, Atlantic City. Asbury's permanent population of more than 4,000 residents swelled to 30,000 during the summer months, people who could now stroll its expansive avenues and shoreline in the evening under the welcoming glow of electric street lamps. One estimate for the 1883 season calculates summer visitors at more than 500,000 people. A dozen hotels were constructed to accommodate vacationers, and hundreds of private and guest cottages dotted the tree-lined streets. The city also supported 3 newspapers and 3 banks, plus an opera house and a library and lecture hall. By 1890, as a testament to the popularity of Asbury Park, several of the hotels remained open throughout the winter months. In 1877, a 1-mile primitive boardwalk was constructed and connected to Ocean Grove, creating an uninterrupted promenade of 2 miles. As in most seaside towns, the first boardwalk or plank walk was portable and stored at the end of each season. Contemporary reports tell of a quite narrow wooden sidewalk, really, rather than a boardwalk. The first substantial elevated boardwalk, constructed in 1880, varied in width from 16 to 32 feet. Bradley provided his tourists with benches spread along the boardwalk every 10 feet. He also constructed the city's first covered pavilion near Asbury Avenue, called naturally Bradley's Pavilion, or simply Asbury Avenue Pavilion. It provided a venue for band concerts and the first boardwalk retail enterprise, a candy store. Stephen Crane, author of The Red Badge of Courage, also spent part of his childhood in Asbury Park before gaining literary fame. He wrote in 1896 that, quote, "The very heart of the town's life is at the Asbury Avenue Pavilion," end quote. Bradley also constructed a fishing pier just north of the pavilion, and with his flair for the unusual, he added a saltwater tank complete with sea lions to thrill the excursionists. In 1888, Ernest Schnitzler, that's kind of a mouthful, built a 100-foot square enclosed pavilion at the intersection of Cookman Avenue and Kingsley Street to house his carousel and amusement hall. This was the origin of Palace Amusements, originally known as the Kingsley Street Merry-Go-Round, an institution that would become emblematic of Asbury Park for generations of adults and children. One such individual was Bruce Springsteen, who immortalized the Palace in such songs as Born to Run, Tunnel of Love, and 4th of July, Asbury Park, Sandy. The major attraction was the beautiful carousel crafted by Charles Loof, one of the first great American carousel artists. 70 hand-carved animals, including horses, goats, camels, giraffes, and deer, spun on unison with cherubs and chariots as they transported 78 travelers to a magical world of bright lights and deafening organ music, all for the price of admission. A lucky few who snagged the brass ring took another trip, compliments of the palace. In 1895, Schnitzler responded to demand for additional attractions with a roundabout and observatory. He designed and installed a Ferris wheel in a new structure situated just west of the Carousel House. What made the new attraction so unique was how the upper portion of the giant wheel rose high above the roof in an east-west orientation, providing passengers with glorious views of Asbury Park and the Atlantic Ocean. He even added an observation platform where voyagers could step off onto the deck when their carriage was at the wheel's zenith. What a sight the wheel must have been at night, covered with more than 500 lights on the observation tower and wheel. The Crystal Maze, a hall of mirrors, was added in 1903, and in 1932, a second carousel was installed in the casino building across the street along the boardwalk. In 1956 came the Funhouse and Bumper Car building, along with its signature wall paintings, a series of bumper cars, and the two large fun faces. One face, outlined in neon, became affectionately known as Tilly, a wild-eyed, semi-demonic clown face that became synonymous with the Palace Amusements in Asbury Park. There's more to that story we'll cover in the next Asbury podcast. When the Palace began its 1903 Crystal Maze expansion, the city of Asbury Park had been under the control of James Bradley for 33 years. That year, when the city council convinced Bradley to sell the beachfront to the city for $100,000, marked a turning point in the resort's history. The decades-old fight between Bradley and the city will be the topic of the next Asbury podcast as we get into the glory days. He was a character that, while contributing to Asbury's early days, he held the resort back with his unusual beliefs. Here's a teaser. The founder banned the sale of hot dogs on his boardwalk. Why? Let's just say he was a complex man. Until then, this is Emil Salvini. Please tell your friends and relatives about Tales of the New Jersey Shore so I can keep them coming. Until then, have a wonderful day.